We're not exactly sprinting over the line in style, but like the tortoise and the hare, it's all about getting there in the end, and Reading find themselves just 1 point away from reaching their playoff goal, despite a 3-2 defeat at Nottingham Forest that left more questions than answers, but we'll do our best to answer those questions right here on the Tilehurst podcast, episode number 127. Hello and thank you for taking the time to download and listen to the show. My name is Dan Wimbush, editor of the Tilehurst, and joining me this week are Tilehurst deputy editor Jonny Williams. Jonny, welcome back.
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it?
Good to have you back on the show for the business end of the season.
I did get involved technologically with the post-game show the other week, but against Rotherham. But it feels good to actually be in your presence physically again.
Absolutely, back home. And joining us as well, another voice from the past, and not so recent past actually. I should say the more recent past, Rob Langham from the Two Unfortunates is back. Rob, good to have you back on the show again.
Thanks for having me again, Dan.
Absolute pleasure to have you with us. Before we delve into the recap and look back at that Forest game, a very big thank you to those of you who have taken part in the Patreon crowdfunding campaign. I know I say this every week, but it means so much, and it really does help drive us forward as a website, YouTube channel, podcast, and whatever we do these days, mugs, everything. We are jacks of all trades now here at TTE, and that is thanks to your generous support. This week, I'd like to give shout outs to Alison Robbins and Brian Cutledge, who have both kindly put their hand in their pocket and donated a couple of quid each to help us go forward. So thank you very much to the two of you. And if you want to join in, you can head to patreon.com/the Tilehurst End. That's patreon.com/the Tilehurst End and find out more. And any questions, of course, just send us an email to the tilehurstend@gmail.com. But right, let's get into that recap. It was Nottingham Forest 3, Reading 2.
View from the Tilehurst End. Recapping this week's championship action.
Jonny, what do you take out of this game? Do you look at the Reading team that were 3-0 down to a team one place out of the relegation zone after an hour? Or do you look at the Reading team that fought back, got 2 late goals and could well have snatched a point?
Well, the easy answer is to say you look at both of them. And I think you see in the first 60 minutes what's been one of the worries or one of the major problems of our season all year, really. And that is when we go away from home, we seem to ship goals left, right and centre. And yet again, I think we're conceding 3 goals a game. And, you know, this has happened again. I think there are some serious questions that need to be answered before we get to the playoffs, although we've only got one away game left before we do get to the playoffs. You know, it's hard not to look at that and think it is a worry, especially if we have that away leg first, even if we get to the playoffs, of course.
Rob, do you think this was just a case of Reading taking their foot off the gas after those 2 wins previously, or was this just a case of they were just beaten by a better side?
I think they were beaten by a hungrier side for sure, a side that's got some good young players. Brereton and Osborne and the like really caused us a lot of problems. I think I would like them to be hungrier though, Reading. I mean, it's disappointing after the real sort of grit and determination that the team showed against Villa. You'd have thought the Norwich game was a pretty big warning to not turn in that kind of performance again. And although this wasn't as apocalyptic, you really want better application, more concentration right from the off.
I think the worrying thing for me is, and I said this when I was on the post-game show with you, Dan, you look at a team like Nottingham Forest, and you see it again against Wigan and Burton and against Rotherham. Their team's in the bottom 5. And if we are a playoff team that harbours hopes of being in the Premier League, we should not be shipping 3 goals to Nottingham Forest, despite the fact that they are fighting valiantly against relegation. We should not be 1-0 down at half-time to a historically bad team in the Championship. These are the more worrying things for me. And, you know, I still look at our goal difference and I sort of think, you know, that is not the goal difference of a team that wants to be or deserves to be in the Premier League. Now, I know, I think, is it Sheffield Wednesday or Huddersfield?
It's Huddersfield. I think they're only, 1 goal?
Yeah, they have +2 as well. So, you know, it's certainly not us that seem to be having these little wobbles or these little worries. But, you know, like I said, I think if you are a team that harbours hopes of getting into the Premier League or believes that you're a playoff side, you shouldn't be shipping 3 goals at a relegation-threatened team like Nottingham Forest. You shouldn't be going into a game like that thinking, I'll take a point. You should be thinking, this is a team who's battling against the drop. We are far superior. We should win this game. I didn't, of course. I predicted a draw, so all of that is moot. But
only one person predicted a Forest win.
Yeah, but you know the point still stands. I think especially the away form is a big worry because we are abysmal away from home.
It is 46 goals conceded now on the road, and if you read my article up on the tilehurstend.com, which looked at the reasons why we've shipped so many goals, you will have noticed that it is historically bad. The last Reading team to concede this many goals away from home got relegated from this division. Terry the Taxi's band of 1998 misfits going down in style, and the last couple of teams before that also got relegated. So this is the sort of form you expect from a team fighting relegation. In fact, Reading's have conceded more goals away than 2 out of the bottom 3. It's only Rotherham, who are on course for a record low points total in the second tier, that have conceded more. I'll go back to your point, Rob, about a hungrier team, and I thought if you look at those 3 Forest goals, they seem to me very much the hallmarks of the team it's not that they weren't trying, Reading. I didn't get that sense that I got against Rotherham where they just thought, oh, we're better than them. It was just that little split second, that little 1% of effort or hunger and intensity wasn't there. And that's why Assombalonga can storm through. And the third goal in particular, where they just completely switch off from a throw-in and lets the Forest player dance through and slot past Al Habsi. That is exactly the sort of hallmark of a team that are just not quite at that pace.
Yeah, there just seemed to be a lack of concentration, really. And the defence, the back 3, it looked like a case of rabbit in the headlights. We were just caught unawares somehow.
Yeah, and Stam, I think, realised that he got his tactics wrong because he very quickly switched. Well, not too quickly, unfortunately, but he did switch from a back 3 to a back 4. Chris Gunter originally starting in that back 3. He then moved out to right back. Bit too late to avoid the damage, unfortunately. And Reading, as you mentioned, they go in at half-time, Johnny, 1-0 down, and then there's 2 goals in the space of about 5 minutes in the second half, and it seems to be night-night nurse. Fortunately, unlike we saw at Carrow Road, perhaps maybe because Forest aren't such a strong team and have something to hold on to and be a bit nervous about, they didn't push forward and score more goals. Reading actually battling back. Jan Kermit getting a couple of good goals. 16 for the season now. Johnny, that is the most by any Reading player in a season since Shane Long, I think, got 21 back in the 2010-11 season. How good has Jan been compared to recent strikers?
It's kind of hard to say because I don't... even though you've just said Jan Kermorgant scored 16 goals, to me it doesn't seem like he has scored 16 goals. I don't know that makes sense. It probably doesn't at all.
No, I know what you mean.
It just seems like he's had a very quietly efficient season. He's never really sort of made the headlines or, scored a hat-trick or a worldie. He's just been ticking along quietly. He's, had a few injuries and he's had a couple of, we've had to rotate him around because of his age, etc. But, you can't argue with the fact that he is putting the ball in the net. And, the 2 goals that we got, well, the first one from a fantastic header from Jordan Abita's cross. And the second one, I think, a Roy Beeran's cross that, again, he sort of reacted fastest to. And, when you put the service in there towards him, that he can deliver. And, yeah, I mean, you've got to say that for the moment, I didn't think he would fit Stam's system when Stam came in. But I think Stam is making the best of what he's got. And Kermorgant is making the best of what he's got as well.
Yeah, I absolutely know what you mean. He's kind of ghosted up there with just like odd goals here and there. And just this past month, really, that he's been prolific. The goals against, scores against Leeds, gets 2 on Saturday, just quietly picks up and racks the goals. Rob, with no disrespect intended, you've watched Reading a lot longer than myself and Johnny. Where does he rank for you amongst sort of Reading strikers of the past? Is he working his way into that sort of top 10 sort of listing, or is he just on that bracket below?
I don't know whether he's been here long enough, but I might liken him to a degree to someone like Martin Butler, in terms of... I
was thinking as well.
Yeah, just who was a great player for 3 or 4 years and then maybe probably wasn't quite good enough for the second tier. But Kermorgant clearly is good enough for the second tier. He's been really good. But yeah, really hard working, a bit of a target man. His defensive work's been fantastic. I mean, coming back to his record this season, though, I think I'm right that a lot of the percentage of his goals have come since Christmas. Is that right?
Yes.
I don't think he was that effective up till the festive season.
I think Gareth McCleary was our top scorer at about 7 or 8 around Christmas, New Year time. So,
but I think he's such a good team player. I just think it's a shame we're not going to see his entire Reading career, even if he plays all of next season, is only going to be like 2 years and a bit. And so whether you can put him up with the all-time greats, I don't know. It depends if we get promoted and he scores like 10 goals next season, then he probably will be. So
yeah, he's got 8 goals in his last 10 games by my very quick calculation.
Yeah.
I think Butler's a very apt comparison. I was also going to sort of I think he's a little touch above Lee Nogan, sort of, you remember the effect that Lee Nogan had, especially in his first season, when he came in after Christmas and scored some vital goals on the way to Wembley, and then just sort of dipped a little bit. Maybe Trevor Morley as well, who had that one very prolific season. Where he got, I think it was something like 26 goals.
Yeah, great player, Trevor Morley, actually. Really underrated. I mean, no pace, but, very clever player.
And he came to Reading at the same sort of age that Kermorgant did as well, in sort of his mid-30s, and sort of defied that to lead the line very well in what was a fairly average Reading team. So that sort of, I don't want to say sugarcoated the score a lot, because I don't think this was a game where Reading were thoroughly outplayed and dominated. This wasn't one where you said, oh, well, we could have got spanked 5 or 6-2. I think, they were in it. They just lost out on those key moments.
I think the issue I have is there's been far too many of these away performances where you do just sort of say, oh, well, it's another bad away performance, we'll sort it out for next time. And like I said, you're running out of opportunities to sort it out, because soon enough, in a couple of weeks, it's going to be the big one, and you're going to need a big away performance. And we've had the odd one like at Sheffield Wednesday when we won 2-0, or was that Huddersfield? I get those two clubs confused.
No, we lost 1-0 at Huddersfield. We beat Sheffield Wednesday 2-0. We beat Villa 3-1.
Yeah, and we get those odd good performances, but generally it is sort of, we go down at the likes of Forest, and you think, okay, well, we'll sort it out for next time. There aren't many more opportunities to sort it out.
No, I mean, I would, in mitigating circumstances, I think from the weekend, where I think the injuries are hurting us a bit at the back. So lesser problem was the three at the back, by the sounds of it, the personnel who were occupying those positions, but more that at wing back he felt his only option was Popper, who I do think is going to be a promising player for us, but it's clearly not his position to be a wing back. Whereas on the other side we had an orthodox left wing back in a beater. I think he possibly should have risked, I don't think it would have been that much of a risk, Tanai Watson in that position, just for a little bit more solidity at right back.
I think the injuries are a very good point. And again, going back to that article that you can read up on the website, I looked, because I've been thinking, we need Paul McShane back in there. He'll solidify things. But actually, when you look at it, it's not so much Paul McShane that makes the big difference. It's Liam Moore having one of, if not both, McShane and Vandenberg in the same team. When at least Moore plus one of those two others, or all three of them play, our away goals conceded is around about 1.5 per game. So something much more manageable. When you either have just Moore on his own or McShane and Vandenberg on their own, that goes up to 2.7 goals conceded per game. So that really sort of shows you that Stam, I think, knows a way to keep the goals down, but he's had so few opportunities to keep a settled side, especially in recent weeks. Every week it's somebody else has got a niggle, someone else has got a knock, that I do feel a little bit sorry for him. Now, could he have played George Evans? Well, he came off the bench, so he's obviously some sort of fit. Thiago Ilori's on the bench as well, so he did have a couple of other options, but there weren't those immediate first choice screaming, why aren't you playing this guy options. So I will give him a little bit of slack for that. But you're right, Johnny, he's running out of chances. And considering that his last game of the season away from home could be against a Burton side who are on the beach by that stage, it's going to be tough to say whether the system he picks for that game is going to be good enough to compete in a semi-final of the playoffs.
Or alternatively, Burton could still... Are they safe now? Or
Not mathematically, no. But it's likely they're going to be by the final game of the season.
But, they could still have something to play for. So, again, if your promotion playoff against Wigan and then you go to that game at Burton, it's going to be psychologically hard for Stam to say to his players, right, we need to get this right because we've got one more chance, because they're going to be thinking, well, it's okay, I don't want to pick up an injury before the playoffs or, anything like that. So... it is a worry for me. It is a big worry.
Rob, do you think he knows his best team going into the playoffs?
I'm not sure. I mean, I was about to make that point, actually. I think it is probably time now to pick the best team with people playing in the positions that are going to play in the playoffs, and where we have injury gaps, put someone directly into that gap rather than switching people from full back to wing back to centre back, or from left side of centre back to right side of centre back. I mean, I think we kind of have to have this template developed now of our best team. And so someone like Tanai Watson, when we have an injury, could come in. I don't know. I think it's difficult. I think we have probably got 18 or 19 players who all can do a job, and I think that is difficult for any manager.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot more leeway at home, because it seems that the changes and the tweaks he makes at the Medeski don't seem to really impact the performance that much. It's just when we go away and you get these complete Jekyll and Hyde performances that you just don't see at home. Now, whether that's got something to do with how much teams are prepared to press us and attack on their home ground, I don't know. But it's such a curious split. I can't remember a Reading team so good at home but so inconsistent away. Inconsistent to the point where, like you said, they've beaten Sheffield Wednesday. They've beaten Aston Villa. They could well have gone and got a result at Huddersfield. They were on top against Newcastle until a bit of a dodgy penalty. So they've clearly got ability. It's just about putting that together on a consistent basis. One other point I wanted to ask is, do you think Reading are too nice, Johnny?
Yes. I think at times we don't show that toughness. If you go back to, I mean, you were saying about giving that little bit of extra, 10% for the goals, and I think you could see that in the first one when the guy beats Chris Gunter out on the outside and puts the cross in, I think, for a Sombalonga, and certainly in the third one as well, where the guy runs through and Behrens just stops. He doesn't give him a nudge, he doesn't give him a little bit of a push, doesn't put a foot in. And I think that, that is something to say for not only that extra 10%, but also that little bit of gamesmanship, perhaps just to, knock them off their stride or bring them down when you know that they're going to have an opportunity.
Rob, what do you reckon? Do you think this is something that Stam's told them to be a bit more standoffy and sort of avoid giving away? Obviously, you tell your players to avoid giving away free kicks. But is he telling them to be that extra bit cautious, or is this just a mentality thing?
I'm not sure. I think this might be a longer discussion for another time, in that are Reading as a club, are they traditionally too nice in the same way that Leeds clearly aren't? That I think we are generally.
Are you suggesting Leeds are a dirty side?
Well, I mean, you look at the way we've approached our various games against Arsenal down the years. I mean, clearly the way to play against Arsenal is to get in amongst them with the flying boots, the flying tackles, and we've always just sort of tried to pass and beat them at their own game, which is just a mug's game. And I just think generally, I can't remember a time, apart from maybe the 6 months when Mad Dog Martin Allen sort of whipped the team into shape alongside Pardew. And that actually did work, and it sort of like turned a bad season round. Back, I'm not sure what year that would have been.
99, 2000, I think.
Probably, yeah.
Flair.
Yes.
Yeah, apart from that, that's the only time I can remember us being a bit nasty. I guess the exception now is Joey, so if Joey's in the team, he's well capable of leaving a foot in or getting a bit aggressive, and he's got leadership, and we've talked about leadership on this podcast before. I mean, we're missing probably our two main leaders. Kermigan, I guess, is one as well, but Joey and Paul McShane are the people who are going to shout at the other players, who are going to corral things, and I think that's as crucial as anything.
Absolutely. I think getting them back into the mix is going to be really, really important to drive the team on. I think that you just need that not arm around your shoulder, almost a nudge in the ribs of what are you doing sort of thing. We even saw up at Middlesbrough last season that McShane's not afraid to get his opinion across, albeit maybe not in quite the way he wanted to, with Danny Williams, who himself had a bit of a frustrating afternoon. He was the first man sacrificed by Stam, and he was a little bit petulant. I think he kicked a water bottle and slammed the dugout. But I suppose at least he cares.
Well, he's that sort of player. He had a similar incident against Rotherham where he got brought down a couple of times and actually went sort of head-to-head with one of their players, and I thought, calm down, Danny. He's just that sort of hot-headed player that is sort of passionate to the point of almost across the line.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing for Reading was that, fortunately, Leeds slipped up as well this weekend. They lost 2-1 at Burton, which leaves Reading needing just 1 point from their last 2 games to make the playoffs. Now, they don't actually even need to get that point themselves. If Leeds were to drop any points from their final 2 games of the season, Reading would also be there. Now, Leeds have got Norwich at home and Wigan away from their final 2 games as well, so 2 games that you could easily see them slipping up in. Hopefully, Reading get the job done themselves on Saturday against Watford, and we'll talk about that in any other business. But, gents, is there any lingering doubts for either of you that Reading are going to make this top 6?
I don't think so, no. I think we'll do it. I think it's highly possible that Norwich will get something out of the game with Leeds, because Norwich, had a good win over Brighton on Friday. They obviously hammered us. They've generally been in quite good form. I would expect Leeds to turn over Wigan in the final game, but I think we'll get something. I hope so anyway. I think we'll probably get at least a point on Saturday, and then the Burton game becomes moot. I can see that just being a day out in the sun with the fancy hats.
Yeah, well, I suppose the one good thing, if we were to not get anything out of the Wigan game, is that would leave them potentially being able to stay up on the last day with a home win over Leeds. So that would give them a little bit more impetus to fight as well. Johnny, any lingering doubts for you?
No, we're there.
Were there? Okay. That's what I like to hear.
My only concern now is which of the 2 dates we get in terms of whether I have to book any time off work.
Yes, I've asked this of all guests in recent weeks, but have the two of you got a preferred semi-final playoff opponent and which combination you'd like to see them played in, home or away first?
I think everybody seems to think probably Huddersfield are going to be the best semi-final opponent. I mean, there's a talk about teams that are in the style of Jurgen Klopp. So David Wagner's very much an acolyte of Jurgen Klopp, sort of running out of steam towards the end of a season because the kind of high sort of energy,
high pressing game.
For a high pressing game, it's really difficult to sustain that over 46 games, plus all the cup ties, etc. And I saw them play actually the other week against Preston, and I thought they were decent without being startling. I thought they looked very much on kind of Reading's kind of level. Sheffield Wednesday, I just worry with that huge support that they can suck the ball into the net, from from their cop, and it's just you can sort of just get completely blown away there. And Fulham, of course, we know they're very dangerous. I mean, I think we showed a lot of spirit when we beat them at home. So I wouldn't say we definitely would lose to Fulham if we played them, but I think probably Huddersfield.
Johnny, anyone else other than Huddersfield?
As long as we avoid Fulham.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm
happy with that.
I don't want to get anywhere near Fulham. I think you could possibly best them on a one-off game, but over 2 legs. I just think they've shown in, 2.5 games against Reading this year that they have got our number. I know we did get the win, but that was courtesy of a last-minute Ali Al-Hamsi penalty save. And I think we were second best in the fogged-off game as well. So, yeah, definitely want to avoid Fulham. I'd love to get Huddersfield. It's going to be difficult to see a combination of results that sees Reading get Huddersfield. They've got a fairly soft run, and they play Wolves tonight as we record this, and if they win that, they'll go above Reading back into third. But I suppose if Reading were to win their last 2 games, you'd say they've got a good chance of finishing third themselves. But then, are Huddersfield going to collapse down to 6th? Hard to say. It could be any sort of combination. Rob, a lot of people have said they'd rather see Reading at home first to give something to hang on to away. Do you subscribe to that, or do you want the traditional advantage of a home second leg?
No, I think that's a persuasive argument. I think having a home game to start with, it'd be very depressing to be brought back 3 or 4-0 down. Not that that's necessarily going to happen, but it would be very depressing to have a home leg where we're already 3 or 4-0 down and we know we can't put a foot wrong. I think certainly at home would be good to start with, because I think would that be a Saturday, or if it was at home?
There's one on the
Sunday.
Yeah, there's one on the Saturday and one on the Sunday,
and that's generally preferable, I would say, in having a home game on a Saturday. So,
yeah, we've seen it both ways from Reading's point of view. I remember against Tranmere, we went away first and did really well, and then ground out the draw in the second leg. Wigan as well, we had the same, where we snatched a win after grinding out a 0-0 away from home. And we've had against Wolves as well, we came back to the Medeski and unfortunately couldn't get the job done. Burnley, equally so. And then when we faced Cardiff, of course, we went away and won in Cardiff handsomely. So we have seen it work both ways, and fingers crossed we can do it the same. Just before, though, I move on, we're saying then Leeds are going to be the team to miss out?
I think so.
That'd be the dream.
Yeah.
I would love it if Huddersfield and Fulham just play each other to an absolutely boring 0-0 draw with 90 minutes of the fans chanting Leeds choked again. That would be my absolute... I would watch that.
Yeah, I think it's Fulham and Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah, that's the one,
game. Yeah,
Huddersfield again. I don't know why I get those 2 teams confused.
2 very similar
Stripes.
Yeah.
Must be the Stripes.
You're just Yorkshire racist, Johnny. You just can't tell the difference.
Is that a thing? Yeah, probably is.
But that would
like their
be
tea.
a 0-0 draw that was contrived, that would knock Leeds out of the playoffs, and then sort of after one of them has won the playoffs against us in the final, they're then brought to book by the FA, and it's to something they haven't won, and we win by default and go up.
I can't imagine that scenario would just be fascinating, because it would be so interesting to see the mentality of those 2 teams.
Yeah.
Because what would you do? Because your natural mentality would be to I'm just going to play this cautious. Both teams would be like, we just not need to lose. So,
yeah.
And then, you'd have 40,000 Leeds fans down the road not very happy. Or the 2 million of them, judging by Twitter and how they judge away attendances and whatnot. But anyway.
I think there's been some talk about, I don't know if it's just scurrilous rumour, but hasn't there been some talk that Gary Monk's fallen out with Janssen, his best player? And,
I think he's left him out of the team. I think he didn't play it in the Reading game, did he? I think he got left out for the lad that got sent off.
I think he was injured, though, then.
This was it. Is he injured?
Well, okay.
But yeah, so it's not all going well. I mean, he does seem quite an abrasive character, does Gary Monk? So I could see that happening especially at a club like Leeds, unfortunately. But anyway, before I get us inundated with hate mail from Leeds fans, we'll move on because we've got some news bites to talk about.
Reading News Bites on the Tilehurst End podcast.
Okay, News Bites time. And I thought I'd take this News Bites edition to talk about some of our loan players because it's been a pretty good week or month for them overall. We'll start, I suppose, at the bottom, league ladder-wise, with Axel Andresen, a young Icelandic defender. But he's done very well at 19 years old. He's with Bath City, where, of course, Liam Kelly spent some time last season. He's already earned the captaincy and scored 5 goals.
As a defender?
As a defender, yeah.
Wow.
He's been taking some penalties as well. So there you go. Next to Ian Hart.
Yeah, possibly.
Well, we had that with Rob Dickey, didn't we, last year, scoring
Yes.
a lot of goals for Cheltenham from centre-half as well. But, I mean, I think this is really encouraging. I know it's a low level, but 19 to be made captain, I mean, it's a tough level and it's a tough physical sort of level. So, I think that says a lot, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. A bit higher up the pyramid, you've got Craig Tanner, who's won promotion with Plymouth. Congratulations to him. Jack Stacey's doing well at Exeter as well. The team might not be doing fantastically well, but there's some talk of him earning Player of the Season honours. He's been that impressive since he's joined them. And Tariq Fosu, we've talked about him quite a lot on this podcast this season, not sort of really getting into the Colchester team. He finally seems to be getting a run of starts. And the manager himself saying, it's great to finally see him be able to produce for 90 minutes. So it's signs that maybe he's not a complete write-off, because there were those early fears that, maybe the hype's got to him and the ego's got in the way. But it looks like he's knuckled down, Johnny.
Yeah, and sometimes with a young player, you need to do that. You need to give him that time and just sort of say, look, you're not getting in here. There's no chance you're getting in at the higher level. And clearly, he's putting the work in, and now he's finally, getting the minutes in.
I wonder how much Stam has maybe gone to see these players. I mean, if that were me as a man manager, I would feel that just dropping in unexpectedly for a game, trying to get hold of, getting in touch with the player and just saying, look, really interested to see how you're going to do. Been hearing good things. I mean, I think that's quite a good approach, really.
Well, Reading's loan manager is Michael Ledgerwood. So he is the man responsible for sort of liaising with Lee Heron at academy level and Jaap, and sort of providing reports and going to watch them. And so I'm sure that Jaap will be speaking to Ledge and getting a good view. And Ledge doesn't seem to me the type of person that would sugarcoat anything. I think he'll give him a nice, honest appraisal. Paulo Hurtado, remember him? He's scored 4 goals as well on his loan spell.
Where's he at the moment?
Victoria?
Guimarães,
yeah.
Oh, Guimarães.
Yeah.
So, any chance of a return for him, do you think, Johnny?
No.
I don't think he'll want to come back, and he just always looked too lightweight. I mean, there's a very slim argument that he might suit the current style of play a bit better, but I just looked too lightweight when he was here.
Any example I can think of that caught my eye the other day is Jota at Brentford, who came over, didn't have a great start to life, and then basically spent the whole year away on loan, came back in January, and he can't stop scoring. So maybe there is hope for Paulo, although I'm not gonna hold up too much of it. So good news for our loan players. You can go read a full loan report up on the tilehurstend.com, written by George. Very much encourage you to go and do so. But of those that have stayed at the club, the under-23s, of course, fighting on 2 fronts as we enter the final weeks of the season. Unfortunately, in the Premier League 2 top division, as we are in now, it's not going so well. We drew 2-2 with Leicester yesterday at the Medeski Stadium. Goals for Yaku Mate and Dennis Rackles, which is very nice to see. A very experienced side. For Reading stands as well. Thiago Ilori also starting that game as well. But that 2-2 draw unfortunately leaves us bottom of the table with just 1 game to go. Our destiny is out of our hands, but we do play Sunderland, who are in the lower reaches of the table on the final day on May the 8th, also at the Madstad. It's free to go to that game, so fingers crossed they can stay up, because the higher the opposition, and they've been getting to play teams like Arsenal and Tottenham this season, and you'd like to see them continue that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good to see him. My dad's actually been to a couple of the games recently, and he reported back that Rackles didn't look as good as he hoped he would. I mean, I think he's still feeling his way back, really. Having looked reasonably decent when he played for the first team before he got injured. Certainly, Ilori needs games. I mean, that's crucial that he gets 90 minutes there. So,
yeah absolutely. And it is otherwise, I said it's a very experienced side, but generally this year it's been a very young side. I mean, you had Danny Loader coming on at 16. He's very highly thought of by those inside and outside of the Reading Academy, so good to see him getting some minutes as well. And fingers crossed they can pull it off. As I said, as many of you can get down, it's on May the 8th, which I think is a Monday. for those of you who can make it, it'd be good to fill out the Medeski. And the weekend before that, this coming Sunday, they will face Norwich in the Premier League Cup semi-final. So that is also free entry at the Medeski for that one. So again, encourage as many people to get down as possible. It'd be nice to see them win a trophy. They won this competition 3 years ago, beating Manchester City 2-0. And I'll have a piece up on the website actually looking at what's happened to that side. A surprising number have already gone. So it shows the fine line between success at youth level and making it as a senior player. But anyway, that does wrap up News Bites. I suppose one other last piece I could mention is the fact that the Royal Elm Park planning goes before the council this week. The council are due to give their verdict. It's already been... Apparently it's going to be provisionally approved. That seems to be the word. So all sorts of rumours coming out. The Reading Chronicle reporting today that the club are proposing to offer free travel to the Medeski to offset the lack of parking. So I'm sure that will be a contentious issue.
I'd be happy with that. I wouldn't mind.
It's not a contentious issue. Johnny is perfectly happy with it.
Well, no,
we will close the book.
I live on one of the bus routes and we drive anyway, so... I wouldn't mind free travel. Obviously, for the people who come from further away, you're not exactly going to get, if you've got people, I think the people who sit next to us come from sort of, the South Downs, so you're not going to get them to charter a bus down all the way there, are you? So
no, Rob, any concerns from you over this whole park scheme?
No, I agree with Johnny, really. I think anything that sort of discourages people from taking their car to the game is good. I mean, I quite enjoy the fact that Arsenal's a ground that's just built for public transport, and of course you have to make sure the public transport's good to make up for it, but it is a bit expensive, the bus. I think £4 from the town centre is a bit naughty on the part of whoever runs that, presumably the local bus company. But yeah, I just think really people sometimes got to get used to sort of using public transport a bit more.
Well, we will see how that meeting goes and what the full ramifications are. We'll obviously bring you an update in the next podcast, and we'll have something up on the website at tilehurstend.com as well. Right, in the meantime, it's time to get to your portion of the show. It is the mailbag.
Get social with the boys.
Find them on Twitter
at the Tilehurst End
and facebook.com/the Tilehurst End.
So this is the bit of the show that we turn over to you from the mailbag, and it's only through your continued support, as mentioned at the very top of the show, through things like Patreon and those of you who do send us in questions, that we keep going. So a massive thank you to anyone who has sent in tweets to at the Tilehurst End, or is emailed thetilehurstend@gmail.com, or who visits us on Facebook at facebook.com/Tilehurst End. And a very big shout out as well to everyone who is getting on board for the YouTube channel. Our subscriber count is slowly ticking up. If you've not checked it out yet, very much encourage you to do so. It's www.youtube.com/the Tilehurst End. We've got lots of great new features that we're trialling out. We're sort of finding our feet at the level, but we've, as mentioned earlier, myself and Johnny, we did a post-game show. We sometimes do pre-game shows.
Post-game show where we didn't realise we were on air for about a minute.
Exactly. Don't pull the curtain back, Johnny. I've edited that out of the YouTube version.
Oh, everyone knows we're an unprofessional joke.
Wow, Anyway, yes, so we are very much still finding our feet. And we've also got the Pub Chat Extra segment, which, Rob, you were part of the very first one of those we did. We'll be doing another one after the recording of this show, where we'll be looking at which Championship manager you'd like to see in charge of Reading if it weren't Jaap Stam. And that comes to us from Louis Burton. So we will be discussing that topic after this show records, and it will be up on YouTube in the next couple of days. So again, youtube.com/the Tilehurst End. Right, mailbag time. Steve, aka Raw Hoops, says, is our away form a personnel and tactics issue or more of a mental block? Rob?
I think we discussed it a bit. I mean, I think it seems to be mentally, really, mainly. I think like some of the players just seem to be slightly back on their heels. Sometimes there's a lack of zip to the passing. I think that, I'd say it's probably mainly that, but it's probably a combination of tactics. But I'm not going to stand too much for the tactics, because you look at our league position compared to where we finished last season, and it's an extraordinary turnaround. So probably just a mixture of things, but probably mental primarily. Yeah.
I'd have said the other way. I'd have said more of a tactics thing, actually. I think you mentioned it earlier as well, Dan, with when you're playing at home, teams don't come onto you as much. And so that gives us more time to play our patient passing game and, try and find the opportunities and find the gaps. Whereas if you're playing away and trying to do that, you're almost expected. The fans are expecting you to close Reading down and to put pressure on them. And to be honest, I don't think we cope very well with that. Whilst we've got players who can pass the ball around and are comfortable, I think there are players who you can exploit, who you can get to in a tactic like that. I think of people like Tyler Blackett instantly, who you can sort of isolate and really put pressure on and force into a mistake. So I think tactically, there's something to be said for what we do at home just not working away.
Yes, Stam for me has shown that I don't think he's got a plan B. I think he's got a plan 1A, 1B, 1C. But we've yet to see a proper true plan B. We've yet to see him go, you know what? I want to stop this style of play. I'm going to play this way. Either I'm going to play really narrow or we're going to play a little bit more direct. Seen it in little tiny patches of games, but not a true sort of fundamental shift. Now, I applaud him on the one hand for sticking to his principles, but when we go into this semi-final, principles aren't going to get us through it. So I think we discussed this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. I think it's too late to do that now. I think you've almost got to do or die with what you know. But I do think it is slightly more of a tactical than a mental issue. I just don't think the defence have had that protection. I think I'd like to see more games where you're having two sitting midfielders. The amount of times we've gone into away games with both Swift and Kelly as our midfield too has just been a bit too many for me away from home. So slight tactical, but I do think there is a mental impact as well. So sorry, Steve, I've kind of sat on the fence for that one, but hopefully
it's not what I do apparently.
I know it is very much you. It's obviously the effect you have on me in the room, Johnny. Hugh asks, how worried are you that a playoff semi-final could be over before the home leg with our away form? Well, we touched on this a little bit earlier.
Very.
I'm going to agree, Rob.
Well, I think so, but I mean, surely we've got to just be screaming at the players in the dressing room before the game. Do not ship loads of goals. I know it's easier said than done, but I mean,
Let's put a big sign up.
But I mean, some of the signs of the Norwich game where players weren't tracking the runners, I mean, that's obviously just totally unacceptable. So,
well, I noticed that Jordan Much has been nowhere near the team since that game, so Stam very clearly not happy with him.
Yeah. I'd like to think that it'd be such a tense occasion that it's rather than a run-of-the-mill league game where we start off with one of those sort of quite quiet crowds for the first 10 minutes and then you get caught with an early goal and then the momentum builds for the home side. I'd like to think that we'd be on it from the first whistle. So I am a bit worried, as I said earlier on, but I think overall surely we've got to give 150% for both of these games and see where we are at the end of it. We've got to.
Yeah, I think it's a more realistic prospect than I think I've had going into any other playoff campaign of the 5 we've had where I have genuinely thought we could get an absolute hiding. Just because we've seen it too many times. There's a reason this team's conceded 46 goals away from home. But, like you said, Rob, you've got to hope the players really, 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 really switch on for this one. And it is a cup final, in effect, 3 cup finals to make the Premier League. So, fingers crossed they can do it when it matters. Alex Everson, can we stop with the experiment of Popper at right wing back? And if we are going for 3 centre-backs, actually play 3 centre-backs?
Well, I think there's something to be said, not necessarily for Popper playing at right wing back, but for playing Gunter as a centre back. Because if you are playing that 3 at the back, and I mean, you see it with the most obvious example is Chelsea, who play Azpilicueta at centre back, and they don't play him at centre back because he's tall and good in the air and will dominate you physically. They play him because he's a very good ball player. And someone like Chris Gunter, I think, is that similar type of player. Because there's not a revolution in the game now where you need more tall people to head the ball because the ball is staying on the floor even more. So if you've got another person in that back line who can pass the ball around, is comfortable, can create different angles and help you retain the ball, then absolutely. I've got no issues with playing Gunter as a centre-back, but like Alex says, I think it opens you up to questions at the right wing-back position.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I think Gunter's played centre-back, I think, quite a bit for Wales. Mm-hmm. And I just think, like I said earlier on, I think Popper, look at his record for Romania and Steaua Bucharest and that. I mean, I think we've got a player who I think next season could be quite important, whatever league we're in. But, clearly being asked to defend against a really whippy winger was never going to work. And I think, someone like Watson, just put him in, So, I would be happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely agree with both of you, really. Cameron Wiper says, pitch invasion, yay or nay? Presumably talking about the Wigan game. Should we confirm a playoff spot?
Well, I think if we have a pitch invasion, if we don't get in the playoffs, like we did a couple of years ago, then we should probably have one when we do get in the playoffs. Although I don't condone it, obviously.
There are perils, aren't there? Because I think Bolton had a pitch invasion on Saturday, didn't they? And then Fleetwood got a late goal or something, and so they weren't actually promoted. And then the other thing, I think, I would definitely say nay, because I think, the job's not done. You have to get it. I mean, even to the extent, I saw the way Sheffield United have celebrated their recent promotion, and part of me thought, oh yeah, good for you, celebrate away. But then part of me thought, given for a club that side to be in that division for 6 years, they really should have been stiff handshakes all round.
I think that was more of a release for the fans, though, more than anything, who had to sit through that. Probably exactly the same feeling of, why are we doing this? What?
Well, I think it was the same at Newcastle.
I was going to say.
I watched that last night, and on the one hand, I was thinking, why aren't you on the pitch? Why aren't you all celebrating? And then I just sort of thought, well, you must just be like, yeah.
The ground was empty about 10 minutes after full time. Yeah. It was just a case of, oh yeah, okay,
done it.
Back to the Premier League.
Yeah, on to the next.
I think the job won't be done at getting into the playoffs. I mean, it's a great achievement, and I think after we've lost in the playoffs or won them or whatever, we'll look back on the season and think that was a great season, real progression. But I think just in the heat of the moment, I think you've just got to think, well, on to the next game.
Yeah, I would say I'm saying nay. I think, again, I'm not condoning what is technically criminal behaviour, but should we win a second leg of the playoffs at home, there may be more of an understanding attitude. Again, not that I can condone such activities, but yeah, if you are going to do it, well, read between the lines. Anyway, Raw Reading says, are we more likely to finish the job and pick up a point, or will Leeds fail to win? So what's more likely, that we get the job done at the weekend or someone does it for us?
Like I said about us playing Forest and Rotherham, if you go into a game against the team 23rd in the Championship and think there's any doubt that you're going to win, you should not be a playoff team. We're going to win. We will win.
I'm going to reserve my sort of punditry for later on, but yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think we could draw, but in answer to the question, I think we'll do it ourselves.
Yeah, if you lose, as Johnny said, if you lose at home to Wigan, team 23rd, who are 6 points adrift of safety and have just been, okay, they've not been horrendous away from home, but they're a bad side. There's a reason why they are. You almost don't deserve it. So yeah, I think we're going to get that point and do the job ourselves. Louis Burton, as mentioned, provides the question for our pub chat extra, so I'll skip that over on who would we have as our manager if it wasn't Jaap. Matt asks, let's say we remain in the Championship next season. What areas do we need to strengthen in the most, and which players would you let go? Well, I think this is one for, again, a more extended talk, because we could almost have 20-25 minutes on this alone. But I will flip this around and say I don't think there's a position where we won't need to strengthen if you want to survive in the Premier League. I think from almost goalkeeper, I think Al Habsi's borderline Premier League quality at this stage. I don't think there's an area where you wouldn't like to sign at least one player.
Oh, Premier League certainly, but I think remaining in the Championship, I think we've got like the kernel of 8 or 9 people who at least I think are going to be good enough, and we've got people like Kelly and Swift who are possibly going to be better next year as they get older and more experienced. So. But yes, it's definitely a longer discussion item, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing about remaining in the Championship is the big question is we just don't know what the budget is. We don't know what the intention of the Chinese owners, if the takeover goes through, that is. So we don't know what their power will be. We don't know who they'll have to sell to cut the cloth. So that will all sort of muddy the waters as well, Johnny.
Yeah, and I think even in this climate, if you get silly bids for the likes of Moore, Swift, possibly even Kelly, then I think we're not a club that is able to keep our best players.
Is there only one or two players that you would say definitely time to move on?
Oh, I wouldn't necessarily say time to move on. I don't think anyone's so long in the tooth as Hal Robson-Kanu, who was very long in the tooth indeed after about 3 years of being at the club and managed to somehow stay about another 7 or 8 more. No, there's no one I'm actively looking to move on. I mean, I'd like to keep Danny Williams if the wages are agreeable to both parties, but I doubt that will happen.
Anyone stick out for you, Rob?
Not really, not at the moment. I mean, you can say about fringe players who are on the outside of it, like people like Hurtado, but I don't think
Gravenberch.
Yeah, I don't think anybody who's in and around the team this year is ripe for being replaced immediately.
Yeah, well, as I said, we'll talk about this in far more detail at the end of the season. Hopefully, it's a hypothetical question and we're playing Premier League football, but don't worry, we will very much get into a full sort of analysis of almost go squad by squad player at the end of the season. So thanks very much for the question, Matt. Jeff Hallett says, we look more solid away with Evans in the team. Thoughts on why he's no longer starting games? I think injury has played a big part. I think he's only just come back into contention. But is he a starter for you, Rob?
I think he can be, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think he's had a good season overall. I think particularly last year he looked like a signing. He didn't feature much, did he, in the final half of last year? Credit to Brian McDermott for bringing him in. I think he's been worth every penny of his 400,000 fee. And he's young. I mean, he seems to do the job. He fits into the system well. The only thing you'd say, as a pivotal defensive midfielder, could you expect him to tackle a bit harder, a bit more? But the game's changed, hasn't it? You know, we don't get people like that anymore. You get more the kind of Makelele style water carriers and people who just pass it and pass it and pass it, rather than the old-fashioned kind of Kevin Ball type figures who would just kind of sort of clog people.
Well, if anyone that was going to teach him, I think his academy coach at Manchester City was Patrick Vieira.
Yeah.
So you would have thought if there was a foot to be put in, I think Patrick would have told him in no uncertain terms to put that foot in.
I think there's a case for putting him in one of these games, and we talked about the Kelly and Swift in the same team thing, and I think there's a case for putting him in. He'll just keep the play moving, I think, in the match against Wigan.
Yeah, I think very much away from home, I like to see Evans in the team, Johnny.
Yeah, I think he's sort of a combination of Williams and Kelly, really, which is perhaps why Stam isn't playing him so much, because I think he doesn't quite do what Williams does. He doesn't quite do what Kelly does, but he does a combination of the two at perhaps 95%. And so, you know, when you put Williams and Kelly in away from home, you don't necessarily need Evans there as well. You might want a more attacking midfielder like Swift in there. So
yeah, as I said, I would very much have Evans and Vandenberg in the same team away from home in the playoffs. I think I want every bit of bite and every bit of steel I can get in that midfield. I think you play, possibly even put Vandenberg in the back three, then you have Evans and Williams sort of almost sitting in front, and then you let either a Swift or a Kelly in there to be that one creative outlet. I just want to see the dogs of war almost for this away leg in the semi-final.
All I'll say is we need to sub Joey off when he gets a yellow card.
Yes.
Otherwise it could be game over.
He's just had the one red this season.
I think that even got rescinded. Didn't that got rescinded, yeah. I think, in the end. Yeah. Against, was it Brighton? In the last minute he got sent off. Yeah,
which compared to his career record is really impressive improvement in his...
Yeah, I think injuries have helped him in that regard.
Yeah, that's right.
Saved him from himself.
I do think it's been a great signing, though. I mean, I think it's just like plucking someone out of the lower divisions in Holland like that, and well, not the lower division, but lower levels in the Eredivisie. But just in terms of his kind of character and spirit, I think he's been a really great signing.
He's only really let me down when he's played in a back four. Yeah. I think I think at Old Trafford he was horrendous.
Yeah.
But if he's part of a three centre backs or sitting in front, I think he is a very good player. So hopefully he does get fit in time. Stam's quite optimistic that he will be. The same with McShane as well. I think Callum Harris just had another operation, so it looks like he's out now for the season. So we wish him a speedy recovery. But it looks like everybody else has got a shot of being in there. Harry Smith talks about one of those injured players. He says, is there any time to reintroduce Thiago Ilori back into the side before the playoffs come around, because Tyler Blackett is a liability? A bit harsh on Tyler. Okay.
I think it's harsh on Blackett. You know, like I said earlier, I do think you can get at him, but I think he's had spells where he's been good, although I do worry about the mental side of the game with him. I do think he's a bit lackadaisical at times, and perhaps not someone you'd want to rely on in a playoff fight. As for Ilori, like Harry says, I think it might just be a little bit too late, because if he comes in, I mean, I'm sure he's been doing all the learning in the textbooks, but it's a far different cry doing it on the training pitch and even in games. And he's only really got 2 games now before the playoffs, if he can make it on Saturday against Wigan.
Is he a big enough upgrade, do you think, to gamble with?
I mean, I've not seen very much of him, so I wouldn't like to judge. I mean, obviously we paid a decent fee for him. We might be forced to play him if we have injuries, but I think if everybody was fit, I don't think he'd be in the team.
I'd be very tempted to play him on Saturday. I think if you can get the 2 games out of him, given that he's just played for the under-23s as well, I think if you can get those 2 games out of him, I think you give him every chance of playing and making it, because he is that classy player. We've only seen one start of him and a brief sub-appearance in the first team, or 2 brief sub-appearances. now, but I do think he has got quality, and I would like to see him around. Not necessarily in place of Blackett. I just think it's such a lottery now whether McShane is going to be fit as well. I mean, the argument is, do you throw McShane straight back in there?
Well, I think you do, yeah. I mean, you need your leader. So, yeah.
The other thing, McShane's been playing much or most of the season, and is far more experienced, has played football over the last 2 years, whereas Ilori hasn't really been in a first team for 2 years or so.
Yeah,
so that's
very
the
good
issue.
points. Very good points. Right. Thank you to everyone who's contributed to the mailbag via at the Tilehurst End on Twitter, thetilehurstend@gmail.com, at facebook.com/tilehurst End. And if you do get in touch via Twitter, try and include hashtag TTE podcast if you possibly can. It really does help when I'm trying to sift through and grab questions. So thank you to those of you who are taking the time to do so. Right. That big game with Wigan, the final home game of the season, well, maybe not final one, but the final regular home game of the season coming up against Wigan on Saturday. We're going to preview that in Any Other Business.
The Tilehurst End Podcast.
Any other business?
They are a team 23rd in the Championship. They are 6 points from safety. They are Wigan Athletic. Johnny, this could well be their 4th relegation in around 5 years. Are Reading going to do it? Are they going to relegate Wigan on Saturday?
Yeah.
Rob, are Reading going to relegate Wigan on Saturday?
I'm not sure about the permutations, but I think so.
They need
yeah.
2 wins from 2.
Yes, yeah. No, yeah, I think we will, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to say as well. Although Wigan have been known to come to the Madsstad and spoil the party in recent years, I think they've won two out of their last 3 visits. I remember a midweek game where they, I think, won 2-0. That game in the Premier League as well, where we desperately needed a win, and we were 3-0 down by half-time with Pogrebniak sent off.
That was awful. Absolutely diabolical afternoon, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Beyond awful. So they have got precedent for spoiling the party, also famously denying us a playoff place at the DW Stadium, or JJB as it was then in the last day of the 2004-05 season. Away from home, I kind of touched on this earlier, they've not actually been dreadful. They have won 5 times away this season, including a win at Huddersfield. And they've got some talented players, Rob. If you look at their squad, you know, lots of names that you recognise from the Championship over the years. You've got the likes of Matt Gilks, you've got Dan Byrne in the defence, Stephen Warnock, Ryan Tunnicliffe, Gabriel Obertan, who knew he was still playing football, and Nick Powell, who, you know, was getting some games at Manchester United not so long ago. So there is quality in that squad.
I think so. I mean, one player I do like is David Perkins, who's coming towards the end of his career. But, I mean, having said that, I think compared to a lot of the squads in the division, I still think it's markedly weaker, and I can see why they're going to finish dropping out the division.
There looks a lack of firepower. Will Grigg is very much not on fire there.
I've forgotten about him. Is he fit at the moment? Or?
Not even sure. He didn't feature against Cardiff, so I'm not sure what his status is at the moment.
No, yeah. I mean, yeah, there are a few names in there. Tunnicliffe, I think, is a good sort of combative midfielder, and, you know, Stephen Warnock has certainly been around for a time. But when you're putting Gabriel Obertan up front, it's I don't think you can expect much really. Yeah. And Will Grigg, who I don't think has got too many goals this season.
Powell is the danger man for me. He got that hat trick of the week against Barnsley, I believe, and he certainly got
2-0 down after 75 minutes, weren't they? And then he came on and got that hat trick in about 15 minutes.
Will Grigg's not featured since the 4th of March, so I'm not sure if he's just being doused or if he's properly injured. Either way, he's definitely not on fire.
Burnt out, maybe.
And they obviously got rid of Adam Lafondra as well, who they started the season with. He's now at Bolton. So, a definite lack of firepower, at least you'd think so anyway. But they could cause an upset. The bookmakers, they're only 11-4 to win the game, so just under 3-1. Reading are evens, and the draw is 23-10. Their form, they've won 2, lost 3, and drawn 1 in their last 6 games. So, we talked about this earlier, but you would go fully whole strength, playoff-esque team? Or would you pick a team that you think is going to beat Wigan? Or is there even a difference?
Well, I think we picked a team that we thought was going to beat Rotherham, and for 45 minutes they weren't. Or for about 75 minutes they weren't. And that included a few rotations. So I think Stam is just going to say, look, no nonsense now. This is the team I want in the playoffs. If you don't perform, you're out.
But what I mean is, do you play maybe a player who's not fully fit? Do you throw a Thiago Ilori in there, thinking he's going to be playoff ready, but possibly knowing this might cost us a little bit against Wigan? Can you afford to take those risks?
Well, I mean, you can afford to take those risks mathematically, but in terms of performance, in terms of getting everyone ready mentally for the playoffs, I'm not sure.
Rob, what would you do?
I'm not a manager.
Well, I mean, I can see both points of view. I mean, I argued earlier on that you pick your strongest team apart from the areas where you have injuries, where you just put people in direct positions. But I think I'm quite enticed by your argument, Dan, about giving Ilori a run in place of Blackett for a couple of games just to see what he can do. I mean, I just don't think he'd be that much worse that constitutes serious experimentation. I mean, I think it would be like for like, really.
Absolutely. It's such a tricky one because they still do need that point, and the last thing you want to do is gamble and play too many players that you're not convinced about, or trial something new and then risk, getting an upset 1-0 home defeat, then having to go to Burton and get something, and with all the tension that will bring on the final day of the season with scores coming in from elsewhere. You just don't want that stress and hassle. But it is a very tempting and alluring prospect, if I play this player, it's going to an alluring prospect. It's going to make us better for the playoffs. So I don't envy Jaap going into this one. But just a note though, we'd be sad to see Wigan go from the Championship.
Not really. No, it was never one of my favourite away trips, I have to say. I didn't go earlier this season. It was probably our best result we've had there for a long time. But not really. But then again, I don't really wish them any ill either.
I think this is going to be they're like Reading, they got relegated at the same time, so this will be their last year without parachute payments. So it'll be very interesting to see what level the club return to, because for so long it has been propped up and supported by Dave Whelan, who's not getting any younger. His grandson is chairman now, David. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of level they really go to, Rob. I mean, you from the two unfortunates, you cover a lot of the league. Do you think that they will stay in a sort of top 2 tier club, or do you think they'll sort of sink back to their sort of more historical level of bottom 2 tiers?
Well, I think it's a rugby league town, really, first and foremost. And I think even in the Premier League, they're notorious for having kind of low gates. I think one would have expected their relegation the season before last to have seen them sort of consolidate in League One, and it was actually quite surprising that they came back up. And I think it was really a reflection on the weakness of League One, which I think
I think those parachute payments as well, they were still, I think getting 10 million in that league is it's huge.
Well, it's a pitifully weak league the last couple of years. I really do think that league has been terrible. So I think I'm old enough to remember when they got elected into the league in 1977 and I think 78 maybe, and they were a very big non-league club. That was their traditional level for the most of their history, but then of course they've had a roller coaster kind of time. They won the FA Cup as recently as about 2012 or something, didn't they, I think?
Yeah.
So, I don't think they'll come back up next season. I really don't. So.
No, I think, unfortunately for Wigan fans, I do think they are going to sort of revert to a level. I think there's only... I don't know if Dave is going to pump in more money to the club or if his grandson has got the funds to put in, but with crowds that they get of, less than 10,000, and like you say, they were getting those not too much more, even as a Premier League club, it's sort of shown the ceiling. That even after, they spent a best part of 7-8 years in the Premier League, and if you still can't grow the club, I don't know what hope there is long term. Teams like Bournemouth have done it and seem to be sticking around with sort of similar levels of fan base, but with such a lot of clubs in that area, it's a nice stadium and everything, but no, I do think they are going to sort of settle down into the lower reaches, unfortunately. But watch them go and prove me wrong and beat us on Saturday. So anyway, Prediction League time. As mentioned, the only person to get the score right at the weekend was Johnny.
No, it was not me.
It was not you. No, I'm saying Johnny. Tell me who was the person to get it right.
I see.
As you can see the Prediction League behind you.
It was Westy.
It was Westy making that late run.
Oh no, it was me. If you can't see it, it was me. It was definitely me. I've won the league now.
I've looked behind me now.
Damn.
Yeah, Westy predicted a 2-1 home win, so he gets just the 1 point. That takes him up to 26. So, unfortunately, Westy, you can no longer win the league. It's a sad day for you. You can't win it. Johnny, you are the man in pole position.
Joint.
Alongside Dave Handbags Harris. The pair of you, I think, on 33 points each.
Good memory, yep.
I think I'm then on 31.
No, you're on 30.
I'm on 30. Charles is on 31.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's all to play for with 2 games to go. It could still go to any one of the 4 people. As you are in pole position, Johnny, I will let you go first with your prediction.
You'll let me.
I will let you go first. Okay. Or do you want to go second after me?
No, I'll go for a 2-1 win to the Royals.
Okay. I'm going to go for a 3-1 win. And Rob, do you care to give an honorary prediction?
1-1.
1-1.
That's good. Get the jinx out of the way. So We can win now because we're not all predicted to win.
Yeah.
Yes, that does seem to be the way things go. And that just about wraps up the show. As I said, we are going to, I'd say shut the microphones down, but they're still going to be on. We're going to go away and record a pub chat extra for the YouTube channel where we will talk and answer Louis' question about who we'd like to see as our manager if it wasn't Jaap and we had to pick from the current crop in the Championship. So stay tuned on YouTube for that. That'll be the next couple of days as well. We have been uploading some of the YouTube content to the podcast feed as well, some of the post-game shows and pub chat extras as well. So if you like that, let us know. If you don't like that, equally, let us know. Again, it's a show by Reading fans for Reading fans. So if you're liking what we're doing, if you don't like what we're doing, let us know. It's the only way we can sort of cater to various tastes. So thank you for those of you who continue to give us feedback. And gentlemen, thank you to the both of you for joining us. Rob, anything going on the Two Unfortunates over the next 2 or 3 weeks?
Been a bit quiet, but we have got a series in kind of mid-May on football and mental health where we're going to have like a range of posts, 1 or 2 book reviews looking at sort of players, fans, all sorts of aspects of mental health in the game. So really looking forward to that series, and we've got some good contributors for that. So,
excellent. Yeah. And remind listeners out there where they can visit the website.
It's www.thetwounfortunates.com, and on Twitter we're at twounfortunates.
Excellent. Very, very much recommend it. Not just because Rob sat opposite from me. It's a fantastic website. Just going through this historical archive, some of the series you've done over the years have been fantastic reads. So if you do find yourself with an extra 5-10 minutes at work after you've browsed the tilehurstend.com, obviously very much encourage you to go head over there. And on that note as well, do stay tuned to the website because we've got lots of bits and pieces coming up on there. But anyway, that does wrap up the show. We'll be back probably next Tuesday night to preview potentially the last game of the season. We hope not, but it could well be. Anyway, until then, go on you R's.
Tilehurst End podcast.
Read the blog
on thetilehurstend.com.